4, 3.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aidan Buckley, Manager of Communications and Engagement at the Sunshine Coast Regional District. You're very welcome to tonight's community information session on the SCRD's budget. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is located within the traditional territories of the Seychelles Nation and the Squamish Nation. Tonight's session, due to last just up until about 8 p.m, it's going to include a presentation and a question and answer session as well. We're also live on YouTube, and a recording of this entire session will be available when the session is finished, and you can share it, and it'll be available on our website first thing tomorrow morning too. So with regards to the session itself, if you would like to ask a question, just ask that you either put it in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, or else you can also ask it in the chat. And you can also raise your hand, and I will then be able to promote you into the meeting to ask the question yourself. Now to introduce you to our panel this evening. Joining us this evening is Area A Director, Leonard Lee. Area B Director, Laurie Pratt. And we've also got the SCRD's Chief Financial Officer, Tina Perot. And tonight's session is focused in on Area A and Area B. And as I said earlier, it's going to start with a presentation from Tina. So Tina, feel free to start screen sharing there and start your presentation.
Thank you, Aidan. Get set up here. So thank you everyone for joining us for our community information sessions. We have just concluded our round 2 budget, and so we typically come out to the community to give an update on where we stand with our budget. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So we're going to give an overview of the SCRD's round 1 budget. We're going to give a little information related to our utility rates for 2022. We're going to give a preliminary taxation information ahead of round 2. And give a little bit of outlook on assessments, and we'll give some more information in round 2 on that. And we'll provide community an opportunity to ask questions about proposed projects and the budget overall. So as far as our budget timeline goes, we started our budget this year with a community survey, and that was released in September 2021. And the results of that survey were presented at our pre-budget deliberations that were held on November the 1st. So if anyone is curious on what type of questions were asked, what kind of information was released, there's quite extensive information that can be found there. On December 13th and 14th, we held our round 1 budget information sessions, as well as our round 1 budget deliberations. And so we are now here providing information sessions on the results of these past 3 meetings. And on January 24th is going to be our round 2 budget, and we are scheduled to adopt our financial plan bylaw on February the 24th. A little bit of time delay here. Okay, so sorry about that. What's impacting this year's budget? So at the start of round 1, we were projecting that we had approximately 147 projects that were carried forward from prior years into the 2022 budget. And we have about 90 proposed new projects, and in those projects also include any staffing resources associated with some of those. We also had several mandatory items that were provided at our pre-budget deliberations. And mandatory items are things like regulatory compliance, where we have to do certain things associated with our Ministry of Environment, with our landfill, or we have assets that are failing and we need to bring them up to standard for certain things like, say, roof replacements. So also safety related items where we need to be compliant and ensure that health and safety of staff are adhered to. Those mandatory items were included in our budget for round 1. And so those figures are reflective of those particular projects. As far as 2022, there are 16 additional full-time positions to ensure service delivery. So a lot of these staffing resources are to resource some of the projects that are being proposed or projects that have been carried over from prior years. And I think one of the recognitions has been that there are a lot of projects and we need people either internal or we would have to hire external consultants to do these types of things in order to deliver these things through project management or through other various means. We also have several maintenance related items to maintain our assets. So that might mean new vehicle requirements, facility fixes, and equipment upgrades. Just highlighting some of the larger projects for Area A and B this year that are impacting the taxation. And some of them are past projects that the community are very interested in. One of the items starting here on the top right or left, depending on how you're looking at this, is our post-closure funding for our Seashell landfill. And although this isn't a very exciting thing, it's important to note that our requirements to fund the closure of the Seashell landfill, which is scheduled or projected for somewhere in about 2025, is that we have a significant liability for us to close that landfill. And so we have to ensure that we have the appropriate funding to do that. We also have several exciting things going on at the Half Moon Bay Fire Hall. We have some vehicle purchases, several equipment purchases, and also carrying on with the Half Moon Bay Fire Hall upgrade at Hall 2. And so in Area A, we have lots of investments going into our water main replacement. And this has been something that has been much needed in that area for several years since those water improvement districts were taken over back in 2006 and 7. And so this year we're seeing several $100,000s total between the two of 1.45 million. The good news story here is that a majority of these particular water mains are going to be covered through the Community Works gas tax funds. And so that means that the ratepayers are actually not having to be out of pocket for those. So that means several $100,000s are being contributed for those projects. Part of our regulatory upgrades is our dam upgrades for McNeil and Chapman Lake are two of the more significant projects. We're making an investment of over $2 million into our dams or our water systems. Exciting thing, if people have been keeping track of this in the newspapers, as well as on our Infrastructure Services Committee today, was the award of the Church Road Well project. So that is going to be getting started very soon. And so that's over $7.5 million investment that is going into that project. I think that project actually after today is somewhere in the neighborhood of close to 8.5. So upgrades to our recreation facilities, and some of these include some, ensuring that our climate and energy upgrades to those facilities, because as we look to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, these are some of the facilities that definitely are contributing to that. So those particular projects are also included for our recreation facilities. So utility rates for 2022 were approved in December, and those reports were presented to the Infrastructure Services Committee in November. So if anyone wants to get some backup on some of this information, it can be found there. For our regional water system, our rates are going up by about $58.55. For North Pender, $86.24, and for South Pender, $61.38. This year, staff provided a report to the board regarding the refuse collection, and refuse collection is for our areas B, D, E, and F, and so Area A does not participate in this. So biggest note there is that there was scheduled to be an increase for 2022, I think of approximately 5%, and that was deferred. So there's no change to the garbage or refuse collection rates for 2022. For wastewater in our Area B services, none of the wastewater facilities there are seeing an increase. However, for some of the Area A, we see anything ranging from $10 to $315 for 11 of the wastewater facilities. And again, more information on the services can be found both on our website and on that Infrastructure Services Committee meeting. So our operating budget after round one is proposed to be a little over $52 million. And so we have seen a significant increase in our operational and capital budgets for the Sunshine Coast Regional District. I would say that over the last 10 years, it's near doubled. We were probably in the neighborhood of about 26 million, not very many years ago. So again, that's why we see a lot of increased services, increased projects, and increased resource requirements. So our recreation and culture is the majority of our budgets, with water and wastewater being our second largest. Recreation and culture also includes funding to our community libraries, as well as our museum services. It also includes Dakota Ridge. So lots of things included in that particular segment of our budget. Water and wastewater, of course, that includes north and south and regional water and all of our 15 wastewater plants. Our environmental services, that includes our solid waste division, and transportation services includes our ports and our transit service. Transit service is not something that the Area A participants have to pay into. And of course, protective services are very important fire departments. So our capital budget is projected to be almost $42 million for 2022. And it's important to understand this is not new investment. These are carry forwards. So some of those 147 projects like Church Road, the completion of the watering meter program, several of our facility upgrade. For instance, in our community recreation facility, we invest over $750,000 on average there. And so that's all included there. But you can see the majority of the pie is our water and wastewater. And that's really from a call of demand to improve our water in the community. So one of the biggest factors that has really shifted the discussion here at the regional district and on all of the Sunshine Coast is we all received our assessment notices recently, and the Sunshine Coast saw a significant increase in its assessed values. And this is quite common throughout the province. Definitely as we see a shift out of urban areas into more rural areas. So this is a common trend that's happened. And so Sunshine Coast has most certainly felt the effects, and some properties, and this is actually up in Area A, saw over a 46% increase in its valuation, and mostly a transition through and an increase in our residential sector. So taxes are based on assessed and home values. So again, that's really impacting how the rates and taxation are going to look for 2022 in the region. So what does this mean from an overall perspective? Increases due to non-market changes. Those are related generally to growth. So us having, more houses on our streets or more multi-unit developments. And so the Sunshine Coast overall saw less than a 1.5% increase due to that. And so various areas, for instance, up in Area A saw just a little over 1% growth rate there, and increase due to market. So that means, the change that people could sell their homes last year versus this year. So overall, the Sunshine Coast saw an increase on average of 34.27% over 2021. So what does this mean as far as taxation and some of the rates? So what this means here is our 2021 SCRD tax rate for Area A was approximately $258 for each 100,000 of assessed value of a home. The middle column there for 2022 assessment increase is really just to articulate what the impacts of assessment has had on the taxation rate for Area A. And so if we didn't raise any taxes at the start of 2022, the tax rate would have decreased to 196.27. It's really important to note that it looks deceiving, like your taxes are going to decrease because that rate is decreased, but that rate then keeps track. So if your assessments have gone up, the rate naturally goes down. In essence, you end up paying a little more in taxation anyway because of your natural increase in assessments. So as it stands after round one, our preliminary SCRD tax rate for Area A per 100,000 of assessment is a little over $200. So what that means for each value of the home, including your improvements, is anywhere from a little over $1,000 to $2,000 if you have a $500 to $1 million home. So where do taxes go in Area A? Do want to note that Area A is a very diverse area. We have little communities within there, and it depends what services you participate there. So it does vary quite significant in what community you live in, whether or not you participate in something like the Egmont Fire. And if you live in Madeira Park, then you are a member of the Pender Harbor Fire, which is an improvement district outside of the SCRD taxes. So lots of variations there. So where do your taxes mostly go, though? Recreation and culture by far, and again, that includes all the library funding for Seashell Library, the reading room, anything from the Skookumchuck Heritage Society Museum and the community museums here, and then all the way over to our environmental services. So that's our solid waste, so funding things like the Pender Harbor transfer station. So moving on to Area B, the 2021 rate for Area B per 100,000 of assessed value was approximately $275. And again, if we had not started raising any taxes, so the same taxes that we were going to need for 2022, the rate would have been $217. And so the preliminary tax rate is estimated at a little over $243 per 100,000. So again, ranging anywhere from a little over $1,200 to $2,400, depending on what your assessment value is. So for Area B, a lot of their taxes, again, go to the recreation and culture. And again, lots going to their protective services. So again, that's for the Half Moon Bay Fire Hall. Mostly. So lots of your tax dollars going to that. Transportation services, of course, for BC Transit services. So what's next for the regional district's budget sessions? We are concluding those over the next couple of weeks, and they're all available online for review. If your neighbor hasn't had an opportunity to see it, they can resource it there. Our round 2 budget again is on January the 24th, and those meetings start at 9:30 in the morning and are available online and are open to the public, and public can ask questions there as well. Again, our budget is scheduled to be adopted, the bylaw, on February the 24th at the board meeting there. So that concludes our presentation. And I just want to make one other note on that prior slide. My apologies, is that there is a lot of information, like I said, the community survey, our budget book, which is quite a comprehensive guide document with all the tax rates, and we're going to be publishing all the assessment details on that next iteration for round 2, which is scheduled to be released publicly around the 17th or 18th on our website. So you can find and also post questions if you want through that particular means. So that concludes our presentation, and we're here to take any questions if you might have any. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. So for anyone who may have joined us in the last couple of minutes, you can ask a question by hitting the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. You can also ask a question in the chat, or you can raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, I can promote you up to ask the question yourself. And you know, I'm going to start with a question that we kind of kicked off with last night as well. And the reason why I'm raising it is it was actually asked by somebody who lives out in Half Moon Bay. And this was, as Tina mentioned there, this question came through our engagement platform at letstalk.scrd.ca. And it's speaking to the increase in taxes. So the question is, how can you look at nearly a 7% increase in taxes when it's obvious there's not justification for the increase? It appears the SCRD is taking advantage of increased housing values to get more taxes without an increase in services. So I'm not too sure if Director Pratt or Director Lee may want to take a run at that. Thank you, Director Pratt. Go ahead.
I guess I hit unmute first. So, well, we're in a situation where we have a lot of investment that we need to do in our infrastructure. We have, as CFO Perot said, the Church Road well was approved earlier today. The contract for that, I should say. So that's a project that's moving forward, and it's a significant cost, approximately 7.5 million, as well as we have a lot of investment that we need to do around protective services, especially in Half Moon Bay. I know it's significant with the fire halls and And one thing about making sure our fire halls and our protective services are well maintained and well invested in is it does help to decrease insurance costs for any residents that might be living in that area. We also have a significant amount of investment that needs to be it needs to be made in the landfill for the closure as we approach that capacity piece, as well as looking forward to what our next step is going to be, whether or not what we're looking at for our long-term solutions there, whether it's building a new landfill or barging our garbage off to other places off coast. So it's a lot of it is the start of that long-term planning and the catch up for projects that need to be done.
Thank you. Director Pratt, have something to add? Director Lee? Yeah, go ahead.
I think Laura hit pretty much on most of the main ones. There's a few other things that we're working on, of course, and that is we have what I call disaster mitigation. It's the emergency planning, the public safety for when these things happen. Rising sea levels, FireSmart, more water infrastructure with hydrants for that aspect of the wildfires that we know we're going to have with these increasing hot summers. And I guess we're our own misfortune in that we're expanding and people are moving here. And so we have to not only replace the aging infrastructure, we have to plan for the future and get more things like more water. And we have to watch out for the environment as well. A big chunk of the cost of solid waste is actually recycling. And recycling is the right thing to do, but it's costly. And we are using taxation to be able to afford it because we haven't got the user pay system in here yet. So I think with all what I call a perfect storm of things that are happening to us, basically faster than we thought and beyond our control, I think if we could hit 7%, we're darn lucky.
Thank you, Director Lee. I know this is something that you spoke about today during the board meeting, Director Pratt, just the roads up around Half Moon Bay. And we did have a question which came in, and it was someone asking, saying, I've been driving the highway from Half Moon Bay to Seashelt and wonder why the road is almost undrivable due to the state of repair. And they're asking, is this an SCRD budget item?
No, it's not. However, it does tie into board governance, as this is an area that we advocate for. The SCRD does not have roads under our jurisdiction. That's a provincial jurisdiction for the rural areas under the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. I mean, I'm just as frustrated as you are. I drive along that route along the 101 between Trout Lake and Leaning Tree Road, which has become Pothole Alley, as I've been told the phrase is. And I know even the area along Red Roofs, there was a significant rain event in November that we are all very aware of. And the water that washed away there, washed away part of Red Roofs Road, that is a provincial issue. So that includes a lot of phone calls, not only from residents, but also from myself, Ministry of Transportation, as well as to Capilano Highways. And it's one of the topics, roads are one of the topics that we always discuss when we meet with our MLA, Nicholas Simons. So it's a piece that we advocate for. And I spoke with our local manager, Joey Tasker, last week, or actually earlier this week. And he's frustrated as well because he also has to ask for us to be on a higher priority with the Ministry of Transportation. So we've got some really strong advocates asking for for more funding in that area, but I've made a really long answer into a very from a very short one. Essentially, it's not our jurisdiction, but we advocate for more for us.
Perfect, thank you. And the next question then it's just in relation to garbage. The person's asking, will there be further increases on garbage, I guess food waste as well, in next year's budget? Or will there be more relief if service disruptions continue? So will there be an increase next year? We know it's staying steady this year. Will there be an increase next year if service disruptions continue? I'm not too sure I'd like to take that one.
I'm thinking they're probably talking about garbage collection.
Garbage collection, yeah, directly.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
area A, we don't have any of that good stuff.
I see you muted, Tina, if you wanted to.
Yes, I just want to hang back in case someone remembered. So when we proposed the refuse collection rate to stay the same as 2021, a lot of that, it was mostly because we had seen reduction in our materials going to landfill. So our tipping fee cost associated with that were reduced, and the contractor. We also noted that we haven't had any final financial compensation from the disruption in service, so that hasn't been resolved, but yet there was an update on our infrastructure services committee today. So we don't know what the future holds for that. There was indication that there would be an increase for next year, but quite modest, 3 to 5%, if I recall.
Thank you, Tina. Another question, quite short one, just asking, why are there increases to rates for water year over year?
Len, do you want to take that?
Sure. Actually, in the area A, we have North Pender and South Pender, and water is paid for by user rates and frontage fees. So it's a user pay system. It can't be cross-subsidized. And we have two issues. One is increased government regulations and more testing to make sure the water's good. And the other one is that our infrastructure is old and it's failing. And we all have a strong desire to fix it, so quit doing that. But when we do that, we also put in more fire hydrants so that we get better protection as well from the water. And all of that costs money. And in the case of Pender Harbor, it's a smaller user base, so we pay a little bit more than the regional water. Now, we also need to start planning for the future, and there is money in the budget for that. I won't call it a mud puddle, but our rather small reservoir in South Pender is pretty much reaching all it can serve in the summertime. This summer we did hit the allowable drawdown, and so we're going to have to do something to resolve that, because we are growing. 1% is 1%, and we not only want to grow the source of raw water, we also want to improve the quality, and that's true for South Pender and it's true for North Pender. Then we come up with the government regulations of the dam in McNeil that we have to fix. It's the government mandating that, and so that causes an increase. I could start talking about regional water, but I think it's Lori's turn now. So
Nicely handed off there, Director Lee. Yes, so of course, we're seeing a lot of the same issues in the rest of the regional water system as they are seeing up in North and South Pender. You know, the increased regulations, the infrastructure costs with the aging infrastructure, as well as the expansion of services and the expansion of the searching out for new sources as well. And then the dam safety audits, like dam safety audits that have to happen on the dams And those are costly as well, but they're very important to do from from an asset stewardship piece. So, and the other thing is the costs. We're seeing costs for everything go up. As I'm sure anybody who owns a home and is looking to do any kind of fixing up, and everything from brass fittings to pipe to anything like that is getting more and more expensive, partly due to pandemic supply issues, but it's just an increase in the market overall.
Thank you. So again, if anybody has a question, feel free to put them into the Q&A section there, or else into the chat. And just as I say that, we had one come in. So Don, thank you for your question. And Don's asking, when will we know when proposed sites in Half Moon Bay can be used for landfills? He's saying, let's not spend more consulting money when the solution is a transfer station. So I can repeat that if you want, or I don't know who wants to take that one.
So I'm not sure when the report is coming. I'm pretty sure the next report is coming up pretty soon, but I would have to defer to staff on that on the next step of the feasibility for the proposed sites. And I wouldn't necessarily say that the solution is a transfer station. It is one of the possibles, but we need to have all of the information first. And I know there is, being the director for Area B, I do know, I've heard a lot about how the community doesn't want a landfill in our area. But we need to look at all of the information before we make a final decision. And I don't know if the CFO has a timeline on when that next report is coming on the next step of the feasibility study.
I do not. I know that staff are currently working on attaining a second opinion, because that was part of the last report that was presented. So perhaps that's what our participant is referencing. There was some justification as to there were potentially other sites and other options that might not have been explored. So we wanted to make sure before we made any further decisions that we had exhausted all options. So I don't have a timeline, but we can most certainly get back to someone if with that information.
Thank you, Tina. And just as the additional piece of information, when we're looking at barging or transferring garbage off of the coast, it is incredibly expensive, as well as when you're looking at our carbon footprint. It's we have to also look at that too, and justify that. We can't just look at it. It's dollars and cents as well as carbon footprint and what it looks like into the future. So that's very much, those are the some of the issues that are circulating around the board's minds at this time.
Go ahead, Director Lee.
Yes, I was in favor of pursuing a design and a cost for the two recommended options, which is transporting the garbage off coast to another jurisdiction, as well as making sure that the site had a chance of passing government regulations so that we can actually do it. It was quite a surprise, I think, to all of our directors when we learned that there was even a possibility of having a new landfill. We'd been told there was no possibility. You had to have some other solution. So don't want to put all our eggs in one basket, because we have to have a solution. That dump is going to be full, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we don't want to be where we were when we were surprised in early 2019 that we couldn't raise the Chapman Dam, and we had to start scrambling to find other sources of water. And we didn't have, we could have been further along if we'd pursued two channels until we finally decided which one to do. So yes, I think it's prudent to look at both and then select one that's got your best chance of success. Not to mention cost, though. I sure hope we can find a landfill on coast because it's substantially cheaper.
Thank you, Director Lee. I know there's been a lot of work done within our strategic initiatives division on the solid waste management plan right now. There is a lot of information on our Let's Talk platform, so letstalk.scrd.ca, on the solid waste management plan the way it is right now, and proposed amendments to move it forward there. I'm just going to dip into a couple of questions that we got through last night. I know we have a different audience, and there's some really good questions that I just want to bring up. And again, if anybody else does have a question, you can put it in the Q&A or the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and I can promote you into the conversation so that you can ask it yourself. A question we got last night was asking whether the SCRD benchmarks against other regional districts or municipalities. And this person said the tax increases in the last few years seemed out of line with other areas in BC. And I know we had some good answers to that one, so I'll just put that one out there. Go ahead, Director Pat.
Well, I'm going to steal one of the answers from last night, and that was from Director McMahon, who recently taught a course on regional districts through the Elder College at Capilano, and one thing that she said that she found was that each regional district across the province is incredibly different. We all offer different services. We all offer different levels of services. Some regional districts, I believe it's Alberni Clayoquot, has they look after the airport in the area, whereas here on the Sunshine Coast, that falls under the jurisdiction of the District of Sechelt. So there's quite the variety. Some regional districts may only have, like in the North Island, may only have 5 employees and look after only a very small amount of services, whereas you've got Metro Vancouver that has an astronomical budget and essentially only looks after water. So it's really difficult to benchmark one between another because they are so different in that way. If it's service to service, it's a little bit easier to do. So if you wanted to look at what maybe recreation is being provided here versus recreation in another area, and try and figure out that way. But it's the way regional districts work is they're incredibly diverse across the province. And each regional district chooses which services they are going to provide based on what their community asks for.
We do a certain amount of benchmarking just because we try and work with other districts to find solutions. One that comes to mind is the solid waste disposal. We have quite a working group, all trying to find cheaper solutions, and we do benchmark against each other to see what they're paying, how it's working, whether they got a landfill, how costly it is. So we do that, and water is very similar too. You know, the cost of water is, we actually do that to figure out how much it costs and to see how we're doing. So we do benchmark some things, but there is such a wide disparity in population density and all of those things, and the services we offer too. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, and solid waste management is one of the reasons why regional districts were put into place, right? Is, if I'm remembering my history, and Director McMahon will smack me later if I'm wrong, I'm sure, but that's one of the main things that's under the legislation, is that regional districts do need to look after the solid waste management. So that is one area, especially within our Vancouver Island coastal communities. We're very similar in that way, is that we all live very much on the coast near the water, in some cases very close to the water, so you can't spread out too far. And you know, with all of these water courses, you have to worry about your riparian areas when you're looking at solid waste disposal purposes. So in that way, we can benchmark on, but that's one service area. You know, that's not all. How many is it, Tina? 40? How many different services do we provide?
We have over about 110 functional areas and 45 distinct types of services, which is pretty significant.
Yeah. And so, yeah, especially for a small area of approximately 30,000 people.
Perfect. Thank you. Derek has asked a question. Derek, I was about to get to your question because I know that you asked it earlier this week on the Engagement platform. So thanks for joining us and asking here live as well. So Derek's asking, given concerns over recent indiscriminate tree cutting, will the budget allow for reviewing the existing tree bylaw with a view to updating it to apply for residential areas, and with also consideration of FireSmart measures? I don't know who wants to take that one. I see you're muted, Director Pratt. I don't know if that
Yeah,
means you
I
gotta
just
take.
I hadn't muted myself, but I'll take it because Derek, thank you, resident of Half Moon Bay, and yes, I know we've had a lot of concerns in the Half Moon Bay area because of some significant amount of tree cutting in some areas that's created some flooding. The tree bylaw is not, it's not currently on the it's not currently on the docket for review, but there is FireSmart, and maybe Tina or Len might have a better memory of where we are with that, with protective services and the FireSmart, and that tree, the fire smarting of the area. I can't remember exactly what the term is. Len, do you remember?
Yeah, it's FireSmart, and we have two projects on the books. One is to do a demonstration of how to FireSmart residents. We also have one that in the Egmont area that we are clearing the underbrush away and clearing certain amounts of limbs. In Pender Harbor, we probably have more people that want the trees cut down so you can get a better view. So I don't believe a tree cutting bylaw would be very popular in Area A, but I do wish that they would do a little better job of policing the force where people are going and indiscriminately cutting trees down. It doesn't seem like that's the right thing to do at all.
And it falls under more of a provincial legislation again, with the tree cutting. So there's not much. It's part of this problem with regional districts is so much of our jurisdictional ability is not within our, it's not what a lot of our residents want us to be doing. Like, for example, the roads, as we were talking about earlier, we have to become advocates to the province, or in some cases the federal government, for legislation to move forward in certain ways, is in making things happen that way. But Derek, I'd be happy to circle back around with you after and discuss this further.
Thank you for your answers. And I know the FireSmart program, I can tell you from a communications perspective, is something that's certainly on our radar. And I think that the community will be hearing more about the FireSmart program, hopefully in the next month or so, and with a view to rolling that out. And Derek, just so you know, I'll copy a link to the answer to your question, and I'll be able to answer it for you on the Engagement platform too, so that you can share it with others who may share a common concern. Another question from Don. And Don saying, my observation over the last many years is that the regional district, or beg pardon, is that the regional directors spend a large amount of their time on common issues to the whole coast. Why not consider a consolidation of the regional governments into one? A good example is the budget this evening, where the major issues are water, garbage, etc. Go ahead, Director Pratt.
I was going to say pass it over to Director Lee, but that's okay. I can take it. Consolidating into one regional government, it's an interesting discussion, and I know Dawn Dawn, we've discussed this a little bit before and brought it up. And you know, when we have a very small coast and we have a number of smaller governments, you know, you do wonder about that. But that's part of the reason, you know, we do have the regional district for a lot of that to fall under, because water and garbage, except the town of Gibson's, is outside of our the water jurisdiction, but they look after their own water. Yet everything like water and garbage, which are the two really big ones on the coast, you know, all of the governments do support through the regional district. Yeah, I completely understand about wanting to see less levels of government on the coast, and I think that's a long-term discussion for as we look forward to the coast, what we want to see on the coast as part of our regional growth strategy, and looking at it 10, 15, 20 years in the future, what our vision of the Sunshine Coast will be.
Director, do you want to add anything? Are you good?
It's been a long discussion. It's basically as long as I can remember. We've been discussing incorporation, merging districts. Right now, the provincial government's actually discouraging it, which is kind of a surprise. The coast is so spread out that you have quite a diverse interest in a lot of things. If we look at recreation, for instance, we pay for our own pool here in Pender, but we don't participate in the ice rinks and pools in the south. And it's because of the distance between it. You just don't travel that much. So I can see the benefits of incorporation, and I can see the benefits of the rural district. Right now, I believe that we cooperate very well on things like water. We discuss them, we plan across the region. Garbage, same way. The recreational, we understand, we all share equally. There's a large number of services that everybody shares in. And I think it benefits everybody. I don't know if one government would actually make it better or worse. That's something that's just the chicken and egg discussion still. I know that Pender Harbor tried to incorporate several years ago, and it was the same thing, 50-50, one way or the other. I suspect if you asked the question about a single government, you'd probably get the same answer.
And there's pluses and minuses to both, because if we did happen to incorporate as a full municipality of sorts, we would also, we'd be looking at maintaining all of our roads as the District of Sechelt and the town of Gibson's do within their areas. And there's a lot of roadways in the rural areas that we would then have to maintain, which are currently being maintained by the province. So it's it's a conversation piece going forward. I think that as a community as a whole that we need to look at, or that we should discuss if that's what the community wants. But I think it's one of those things that at the end of the day, it needs to be community driven. And I don't think it should be elected driven. I think it should be community driven.
Perfect, thank you. And thanks for your question, Don. Another question then, I think this is a bit of focus on regional water as opposed to North-South Pender. But they're asking, aside from Church Road, what other water projects are being considered this year?
Well,
could you repeat that question again? I'm sorry, I didn't quite.
Yeah, of course. So it's saying, aside from Church Road, what other water projects are being considered for this year?
I can talk about Area A first, if it's
sure.
okay.
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
Sure. We're quite unique here in that we have regional water in Earls Cove and in Egmont, and they pay the same as the south part, but they have standalone water systems, which it's kind of like when we're talking one government, that's kind of the thing you're looking at once you start looking at those kind of things. So to answer the question, there's a place called Cove K, which supplies the water for Earls Cove. And we're putting a substantial investment into that to replace the plant, fix up the road. And that will be done under regional water, just like Church Road is, and several other projects under regional water. In Pender Harbor, of course, we've got the projects that CFO Perot talked about, which is the replacing the water mains on Panorama and over in Francis Peninsula, and as well as the dam, McNeil Dam, making it earthquake proof. And we're going to put a new generator in Garden Bay, and we're looking to add increased filtration both in McNeil and in Garden Bay Lake. So that's the ones I know about. Laurie, you can talk about those other ones down there now.
I'd love to. I love talking water. So we have, we're continuing to do groundwater investigations. So similar as we've chosen Church Road as being a well site, we are also still investigating other potential aquifers that we could tap into to help with that water deficit piece. We also have our WASAC committee, water advisory supply. So I'm sorry, I've completely all of a sudden forgotten what WASAC means, but essentially it's a committee of an advisory committee of individuals who are advising the board on other options. And so they're all community members who have water experience, and they, so we're looking at some long-term solutions that way as well, or long-term ideas that we can be investigating or investing in. We also have the water meter installations that are going to be happening within the district of Sechelt. And that's another huge piece, because water meters help us to find leaks. They help us to stop leaks, and they help to give our residents information about how much water they're actually using within their homes. So if they have leaking toilets or faucets, or if they have water that's running outside between their meter and their house, these are ways that we can investigate, we can fix these leaks and keep that treated water in our system without letting it leak into the ground or go down into the pipes and just be gone. So, there's been numbers of large leaks that have been found already, and when you consider that some of these, there were, I believe there were 4 homes that were leaking enough water daily to supply an average of about 200 homes. And that was found last year during the late spring, early summer, before we went into the water restrictions. And it's just incredible when you think about leaks from one very small area could have been supplying the same amount of water for 200 homes just within four homes. So it's fixing those water leaks is a substantial step forward. And we have the reservoir is just been tabled. It's not completely building a new reservoir. It's just been held off for a bit. We'll see how that is going forward. But we do have those other investigations that are already still ongoing right now.
All right, thank you both. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So again, if you have a question, feel free to pop it into the Q&A or the chat, or raise your hand. Another question which came up last night that I'll bring forward to this session tonight, was speaking about the number of projects. So the question was, looking at 147 carryover and 90 new projects, as well as 16 additional staff, Was there any consideration to reducing projects and staff to keep tax increases at or below rate of inflation? Go ahead, Director Pratt.
Oh, I was going to let it Glenn go first, but he held back a bit. Well, I'm going to start with the first piece is the water. We need more water on the coast, and in order to get more water on the coast, we need staff to make it happen. So a number of those new positions are actually going to be within our water department and our infrastructure services department. The other places where we have seen increases is requests for information, freedom of information requests, that kind of area, and looking. So we need more support services to support those other departments. And to provide that information to the public. Yes, we do have an ambitious amount of projects, but a lot of those projects, sometimes when we say project, it can be from something small, like purchasing a piece of equipment, or it could be larger, like the Church Road well field. So, so looking at the number of projects isn't always the right it's not always the right statistic to use. It is significant. I'm not gonna deny that, but it's to support what the community has asked for. The community has said we need more water. The community knows that we need to do something about our landfill. We have a landfill that's at capacity that we are legislated to look after. So these are all projects that we have to do, that we have to move forward. So we need to have the staffing and we need to have the projects on the book to make them happen.
Yes, I agree 100% with Lori, and it's I know, for instance, bylaw enforcement, we've been spending money on that, and we have extra projects on the go on bylaw enforcement. And that's actually one of the biggest numbers of inquiries that I handle. And people aren't saying, give me less. They're saying, give me more. Actually, they're saying, why don't you do something? They've been years waiting for it. And so I think, like, bylaw enforcement's one of the things we need to do. The parks, everybody's using the parks. They're getting more and more use all the time. We can't say, no, we're not going to do anything there. The people want the parks. They wouldn't support us cutting back on parks or closing parks. The recreation facilities, we cut back on them. Holy smokes, did we hear about that? I can't, in the past, we've tried just saying cost of living increases, cut staff. All it did was dig us a very, very big hole. And I'm not saying it was the wrong thing to do, because it was the right thing back then. We had downturns in the economy. Things were tough. But you can't stay at that level forever. You gotta, you have to spend for the future if you're gonna have a future. And trying to hold things at a cost of living when you're in an expanding world just doesn't work. And so no, I can't see us trying to just go with the cost of living freeze. And as far as trying to, every time we meet, we go over our projects, and we're asked the question by staff, are you sure you want these? Is there anything you want us to cut? That question is asked every time we meet. And I can only think of one instance where we actually said, yeah, this will wait multiple years. We have said occasionally we'll wait till next year, but that's about it. I can't really think of any. We just said, whoa, stop. Those things are dumb. Don't bring them to us. That isn't what happens.
Well, and then the other piece to consider is with regional districts, the way our budgeting works is we can't move, let's say we have an excess reserve in water, we can't move that over to solid waste. It has, legislatively, it has to stay where are you taxed for it? So we can't just move, and that's the main difference, I think, between municipality budgeting and regional district budgeting. So we can't move things around. We keep things as close and as tight as possible, but we don't have additional ways to raise money, and I think probably one of the biggest visuals for me is when we toured Mason Road and we were looking at the pipes facility, and there was, or the inventory of pipes, and Remco had left out a pipe. He wanted to show us what it looks like when a water main breaks or when a water pipe breaks. And Len, do you remember how it was just like shattered, and it was this piece of metal, and there was a weakness in it, and it just bursts, right? And we can't take money from another pot, like it can't come from solid waste, it can't come from anywhere else, can't come from street lighting. It has to come from that water. So we need to make sure that when we're budgeting every year, that we've budgeted enough to last us through the year for when we have instances like that, or water main breaks. We have to make sure that we have the reserves available too.
There's a kind of what Leonard would call a sanity check on our spending, and that is we have a PMAC, which is the solid waste, and we have the WASAC, which is the water. And they're community members, very knowledgeable. We take our projects to them and say, what do you think? Is there something we shouldn't be doing? And we've never seen anybody say, well, I'll take that back. I can think of one that they said, hang on, don't do it this year. But other than that, and we did hang on, and we didn't do it this year. But other than that, they've agreed with us, or in matter of fact, they've told us. So I think that's a good check with the community when you're doing that.
Thank you both for your answers. So we're just past 8 p.m. So we're going to wrap it up for this evening. So I'd like to thank everybody who attended tonight for asking questions. And like we mentioned earlier, there is a lot more information about the budget at letstalk.scrd.ca/budget. On there, you can read through the community survey that we did way back in September, which Tina spoke about earlier. There's a couple of hundred comments on there, and lots of really good, interesting responses too. The next information sessions will be taking place next Tuesday with Town of Gibsons. That will be during their regular council meeting, and then with District of Sechelt on Wednesday at 7 p.m. So I'd like to thank Director Pratt, Director Lee, and also our CFO, Tina Perot, as well for attending tonight. And we'll see you all at the next one. So thank you.
Thank you.